Hi everyone, good morning. I hope all of you are listening. Okay. So happy day. So last week we discussed about early Buddhist teachings and what is early Buddhism. So everyone, is everyone listening? Everyone can hear me? Okay, that's good. So okay, last week we discussed about the early Buddhism and also the give some point. What is the early Buddhist teachings? So as a I'm before I start this class, I give a little bit brief about the last week. We discussed about the early Buddhist teaching and early Buddhism start from the Buddha's time until the second Buddhist council. So, I mean, it is the unbroken lineage that as we mentioned, that Nikaya or Agama scriptures, the early Buddhist teachings are like orthodox, authentic teachings of the Buddha. And last week, we also discussed about Four Noble Truths. So, is there anyone that have any doubt or any question about the last week discussions? Please feel free to ask. So, today is a big topic actually. Share my screen. Okay. Okay. So I believe that all of you understand briefly about the Four Noble Truths. I hope that it provides insights and sense that the key idea, what is the, I mean, Four Noble Truths. So these are suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and number four, the path. So we discussed briefly about this Four Noble Truths. So it is very key teachings. One of the So today in this class we are going to discuss about early Buddhist concept of dependent originations. So I think some of you may heard about dependent originations. It is a vast topic. As we discussed in our last class, what did the Buddha taught throughout his journey? So Buddha said that throughout my teaching career, I taught only two things. One is the origin of suffering, find out the root and taproot of suffering, and another one is the cessation of suffering. So dependent origination, it is the one of the it's captured the Buddha's vision, knowledge, and highest wisdom. And you also can say it provides the conceptual framework of Buddhist psychology, which precisely describes the origin and cessation of suffering. So throughout the Nikaya text, as we discussed, like a Samyutta Nikaya or the connected discourses, the middle land discourses or Majjhima Nikaya or Dirgha Nikaya, the long discourses, Buddha talked many ways and many times the key teachings of dependent origination. So I'm going to provide speak slowly about that, and please feel free if you have any questions at any point. So it is a bit complicated teachings. So the, I like to provide you a little bit Pali words as well. Dependent origination, it is English translation. In originally language from Pali and Sanskrit, it says Paticca Samutpada, in Sanskrit, Pratitya Samutpada. So sometimes Pali and Sanskrit is quite close. So it is not like, sorry for it is not, we're not talking about the language, but it's the, it's the, because in English we are providing translation. So I'm giving you a little insight that how the translation came out, about the from Praticca Samutpada into dependent origination. So again, I mentioned that it is the Buddha said it is very profound and yet subtle teachings, and it is very complicated teachings as well. So as you know that the night of the Buddha's enlightenment, so as after he renounced from his royal extravagant, for 6 years he practiced into the deep forest, and he practiced many types of yoga. So after 6 years of ascetic practice, he went, he understood that he needs to follow the middle way, the middle path. And it was extraordinary night while the Buddha was enlightenment. So that night divided into 3 periods, or 3 watch of night. At the first watch, the Buddha realized divine eyes. So divine eyes refers to the experience of his past life. And at the second watch of the night, he understood he discovered the karma and its resultants. And third watch of his night, he discovered and he penetrated the truth of the origin of suffering and cessation of suffering. What we say in a brief, 4 Noble Truths. And we also can mention that Buddha realized that he discovered the doctrine of dependent origination. So according to the one of the Nikaya text, it says it named the Udana. Udana is one of the texts from Kuddaka Nikaya. So Kuddaka Nikaya consists of 15 texts. Udana, it means the arising verses, origin of the verses. I mean the verses of the Buddha. All the collected in this text. I mean some of the realization, actually not the all, some realization of the Buddha's after he experienced some practice, what he realized, and also some of the Buddha's disciples' realization was collected in this text. So according to the Udana, it says the Buddha spent 7 weeks time in the place of his enlightenment, and first week of his enlightenment, he experienced the doctrine of dependent origination. And during that time, he went through the very details how the origin of suffering what is the how can he penetrate into the truth of origin of suffering, and how to he eradicate the sufferings. So this was very extraordinary time for him and also for his disciples and for his fellows, because during that time he collected and he synthesized the doctrine of dependent origination. So now I like to back our topic. So in Pali, dependent origination, it says as Paticca Samutpada, and Sanskrit Pratitya Samutpada. So according to Pali and Sanskrit grammar and also South Asian grammar, actually the words have a conjunction. So Paticca Samutpada, is consisted about the 3 words. So paticca, sam, and utpada, or paticca and samutpada. Generally, we can divide it into two, but originally it is if you go in details, it can divide it into three words. But for understanding here, for make it more easier, convenience, that the term praticca samutpada divided into two, paticca and samutpada. So what is the meaning of paticca? Paticca we can translate as because of, on account of, or having moved forward, or having gone forward, or dependent upon, or dependently. I like to prefer that paticca maybe is better that because of, or dependent upon, regarding to the translation of the dependent origination. So it have a many, it have a generally literal meanings. So again, I back to the repeat again. The term paticca means because of, on account of, having moved forward, having gone forward, depending upon, or dependently. And samyutpada, sang and utpada, there's two terms. So sang is refers to like a co or coexisting or co-arising, you can say, sang. So anyway, samutpada, we can literal translation of samutpada is rising on the ground of, or another one we can say happening by way of cause, co-arising or coming into existence together. That is the literal translations from the original word. So, and the literal meaning of dependent origination is, we can say that paticca samutpada means dependent co-arising. Also, we can say dependent arising or dependent origination. So if you look at the translations of Bhikkhu Bodhi, this is one of the texts of the connected discourses of the Buddha from Samyutta Nikaya. We can say that he always he remained the translation dependent arising, and also he sometimes remained with this dependent origination. Sometimes some of the text you also can see like from a scholar like Dr. Peter Della Santina, his text, The Tree of Enlightenment. In this text, he mentioned, he translates paticca samutpada as interdependent origination. So throughout my research, my research, I remain with this translation with the dependent origination. I keep this term. So there's another definition about the paticca samutpada we can found from one of the earlier texts. It is not a Nikaya text, it is a canonical text. It was written by Venerable Buddha Ghosa in the 5th century. Almost 1,000 years later, he appeared. He was born in India, and he later on, he moved to Sri Lanka, and he was the one pioneer scholar who translated all the, who compiled the Pali commentary. So in his text, the path of purification, which one is said Pali, Visuddhi Marga. So he defines paticca samutpada as having dependent a right arising. Samma utpada, paticca samma utpada, having dependent a right arising. So he also is somehow he remained with his translation as dependent originations. But it also makes sense actually, dependent, co-arising, and arising. But we will come later. I mean, why sometimes it complicated the translation. So this is the very as we discussed before, as you mentioned it is a very complicated teachings, and the doctrine of dependent origination appeared to the Buddha as the astonishing, eye-opening discovery that brought about vision, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and light during the period while he struggled for enlightenment. Actually, this statement we found from the Buddha himself. And he said, he also said that in another in the same sutra, he mentioned it was complicated, it was difficult to understand, and it is profound and subtle. So once, according to the Nikaya text, we know the story. Once Venerable Ananda, as you know, he was an attendant of the Buddha, and he was his cousin brother too. He said to the Buddha that, "Oh, the blessed one, I understand dependent origination. So it is very easy for me to understand. I got the point." So Buddha spoke to him that he immediately replied, said, "Mahe vachi Ananda." That means like, don't saying so, Ananda. Actually, it is experienced. It is a reflection of the practice. And Ananda, he attended the Buddha, or he was a very loyal disciple of the Buddha, but he was not enlightenment during that period. He was enlightenment after the Buddha's passing away, because he was so busy to take care of the Buddha, and he had a lot of responsibility for monasticism too as well. But anyway, the message of to Ananda is make the clear sense that truly the doctrine of dependent origination could be understood only by those perfectly who is enlightenment. So Buddhist notion of enlightenment means who obtain who enter into the arahat, or the who successfully cut off his defilements through his practice, through his practical life, through his meditation, or through the way, by observing the Eightfold Noble Path. So there's another things like so dependent origination. Buddha very appreciate to those who truly realized and who truly understood the doctrine or teachings of dependent origination. And he mentioned that yo so dharmang pasati, so praticca samutpadang pasati. So that means that one who sees the dependent origination sees the dharma or dhamma. In the same way, one who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination. So it reflects that how important the teaching it is, and how it describes the way how to understand the taproot of dukkha, suffering, and the eradication of suffering. So there are, I mean, so I hope that at this point, do you have any questions? May I continue? Okay. So I please let me know that if you have any questions at the same time, you know, at this point, because it is a bit complicated, as we mentioned. And in
Hi.
this, yeah, hello.
Hi. I apologize, but can we go back to just the core definition of dependent origination for a moment? What is dependent origin? Can you talk about this one more time? I'm not sure that I fully understood what this truly means.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. To the notion of dependent origination, we are coming actually. We are going to discuss about that.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And at the moment, we just give that. We just speak about the term, you know, that's just going to the beginning, just the introduction.
Okay. No
Okay.
problem.
Okay. So anyway, so according to when you, I mean, as we discussed in our last class, what was the Buddha taught throughout his entire teaching life, teaching career? So Buddha said, I taught only two things. One is the origin of suffering, to find out the taproot of suffering, and another one is the eradication of suffering, to show, to delineate the route, the path, how to eradicate the suffering. So that is actually dependent origination. The doctrine of dependent origination, you can say that it is the reflection of the Four Noble Truths too. Because Four Noble Truths also speaks the same things. Actually, this is the, I mean, you can say another way, like a dependent origination is the details, provide you more details. Or Four Noble Truths is like a, you know, like abstract. But anyway, so dependent origination, it appeared in the Nikaya and Agama text in many ways. What I make it, I mean, I try to throughout, I mean, with the research, I try to make it with the there are two principles or two formulas of dependent originations. So number one formula is abstract principles. There's through the exposition of the cause and effect. So in this formula, this is the like the abstract formula of dependent origination is expressed through the exposition of cause and effect. So in this formula, it refers the law of causation that has arising depend upon causes and conditions. So just for your information that there are two principles of dependent origination. When you go to the sutra or discourses, you can find it. So one is abstract principles, and another one is that applicational principles. So applicational principles, it introduces about the 12 links or 12-fold formulas or constituents within the two sequences. One is the forwarding, one is reversing. We'll discuss this part later. So now we are going to discuss about the abstract formula. According to the Nidana Sayuttara Nikaya, Nidana Sayuttara, so Sayutta Nikaya is the Nidana Sayuttara is the one chapter, is the 12th chapter of the Sayutta Nikaya, connected discourses of the Buddha. So in this text, we can see the both forward abstract formula and application formula as well. But abstract formula, again, I repeat, the abstract formula of dependent origination refers to the law of causation that has arisen depending upon causes, hetu, and pachaya, and conditions. Additionally, known as the law of conditionality. I'm providing another formula. So the law of causation, this abstract formula in the Buddhist scripture mentions, when this exists, that comes to be. With this arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. In the sutra, Bahu Dhatuka Sutra from Majjhima Nikaya, Middle Land, it is sutra, the original language is mentioned, imasming sati idang hoti, imas upada idang upajjati, imasming asati idang na hoti, imasa niruddha idang nirucchati. So again I repeat, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. Maybe in general, you can say that because of this, that arises. With the arising of this, that arises. And Narada Thera, one of the very popular scholars in 60s and 70s, late last century, he was from Sri Lanka. In his text, the teaching of the the teachings of the Buddha is just one of the very popular texts. In this text, he mentioned that A, B, C. He said that because of A, B arises. Because of B, C arises. So, and also it is his formula. In his text, he explained. But we are going to the in general aspect. What does it mean? It's talk about mostly about the karma, the law of karma, too. So maybe I go to the one of the example, like clouds, water, or rain. So as we know that according to the modern science, there are many processes that why the cloud appeared. So how the rainwater drop, and from the rain we can find the water, and the water again goes to the ocean. From ocean, it happy steam and it go to the cloud. So just we can see this cycle of this cloud, rain, and water. So we can see that because of clouds, rain occurs. Because of rain, water falls to the earth. So it is, we can see that the forwarding, the origination, how this originated. So we can transform this example, this metaphoric example into the law of causation or the law of karma, that in the karma we can see the cause and effect. Generally, you can see like karma is actually a vast topic. In the future lecture, we will discuss about karma. But I just give you the in general aspect to understand this concept clearly. Karma is action. Vipaka is the resultant. Action and its resultant. So karma sometimes is undescribable. As we said, abhayakata. But generally, we discussed that if we contribute something good or wholesome action return to us. And if in the same way, negative aspect, if we do something bad, so unwholesome or bad things, bad result return to us to back. It is the general aspect of karma. So here that we can see that we can just transform into this formula into the like when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. So that we can see that because of clouds, rain occurs. Because of rain, water falls to the earth. Then we can back, when this does not exist, that does not come to be, with the cessation of this, that ceases. Then we can say that when there is no cloud, there is neither rain nor water. So we can understand this is a theoretical aspect, actually, theoretical aspect of dependent origination. So that means the doctrine of dependent origination, it describes about the law of causations, law of causations, and sorry. So law of causations and cause and effect. So that if we do something good, good things comes to us back. If we do bad, bad things comes to us back. So it is the in general theoretical aspect. So we can just we can, for our understanding, we can just say that cause and effect is the abstract formula of dependent originations. Now we are heading to the practical formula of dependent originations. So in these things, in this part, what we discuss this part, we can understand more clear in the abstract part too. So practical formula of dependent origination is the based on the through the two sequence is formulated in practical way, which refers to the process of a being's birth to death, continuing from one lifetime to another. I pause from here. I bolt on a red color. A being's birth to death. So it explains about our entire cycle of the life, from our birth to death, and also continuing one life to another. So as you know, the Buddhist concept, the belief, the rebirth idea. So dependent origination also explain how the rebirth take places. And in the third way, the practical part expresses a clear structure of the bubble of samsara. So samsara is a cycle of the life. Cycle is an entire cycle. So it is, we mentioned it as a cycle, birth to death, birth to death. So it mentioned according to the, as long as one could not cut off his defilement, he is traveling into the cycle of this samsara, from birth to death. Again he rebirth, and again he died. Again he was reborn, and again he died. So it is the cycle of samsara. So so that's why that it's samsara. Sometimes we explain as a rotated cycle, but nirvana is the beyond the cycle. It's not into the cycle of the love. There is no birth, there is no death, there is no origin, there is no cessation. So there is no suffering, no happiness. It is extinction. It's beyond the samsara. So in this part, the Buddha introduced us 12 links, the 12-fold formula of dependent. This is called the 12 constituents as well. So it start with they give the systematic way. It start from ignorance and mental formations, consciousness, mentality, and materiality. As we said, very common term, maybe some of you familiar with this term, nama rupa. And number fifth is the sixfold sense basis, salayatana, contact or pasa in Pali, feeling, craving, clinging, becoming, birth, and aging, and death. So it comes with the systematic order. It comes from the in the cycle of the 12-fold links of dependent origination. It appeared as a systematic formula. So it has a two. So just for your information, that there are two sequences. This 12-fold formula appears. One is the forwarding. So it describes you the origin of suffering, forwarding order, and the reversing order. It show you how to cut off and the eradication of suffering. So for your convenience, I make this in this slide. You can see the 12 links, how it start. Excuse me. Sorry. So these 12-fold formulas and this practical formula we can found from Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, and also this is also you can find in the Dirgha Nikaya as well. So it mentioned in very in the early Buddhist text, they stay with these 12 links. So based on the 12 links, all this explanation, the later tradition, they evolved the teachings. They introduced a lot of terms as well. So for your convenience, let me allow to read the translation, my translation of the sutra. In this discourse, you can see that start from here, ignorance, mental formations. So the forwarding order of dependent origination, it mentions in that way. With the condition of ignorance, mental formation arise. Abhijja pachaya sankara. And again, with the condition of mental formation, consciousness arises. With the condition of consciousness, mentality and materiality arises. Nama rupa. Mentality and materiality, it mentions nama rupa. And with the condition of mentality and materiality, sixfold sense basis arises. With the condition of sixfold sense basis, contact arises. So you can see the sequence, how he described what is coming one after one. So I continue. With the condition of contact, feeling arises. With the condition of feeling, craving arises. With the condition of craving, clinging arises. First craving, then clinging. Then you see, with the condition of clinging, becoming arises. With the condition of becoming, birth arises. Then, with the condition of birth, aging, death arises. So as we in this part, Buddha also added in the between the birth and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. This is the origin of the whole mess of suffering. Actually, the Buddha said this term, whole mess of suffering. eva metassa kevalassa dukkha khandassa samudaya hoti. Whole mess of suffering. Yes, yeah, I see Linda has a question, so please.
Could you talk about the sixfold sense basis? I'm familiar with five senses. What is the sixth?
Okay, I'm coming actually later about
Okay.
this. I will give it a briefly discussion, in this part. So I just right now I just share that what the main sutra mentioned about the origin of the forwarding orders. So as we mentioned, it happened two sequences. One is forwarding order, and another one is that reversing order. So forwarding order denotes the origin of suffering. So Linda, can you mute your? Yeah, thank you. So forwarding order of dependent origination it describes the origin of suffering, the root, the taproot of suffering. And reversing order, like the backward orders, it says the how can you came out, how to eradicate your suffering. So in the same way, I share with my translation the reversing order and what you can see in the slide. So as we know, the forward in the past slide, forwarding order, the ignorance is the root. So having understood the taproot, the root of suffering, now you work how to eradicate those problems. So let me allow to read reversing order of dependent origination. So it is mentioned in the same sutra, the Buddha said, from Nidana Samyutta of Samyutta Nikaya, 12th chapter of Samyutta Nikaya. With the cessation of ignorance, mental formation ceases. So let's go backward. With the cessation of ignorance, mental formation ceases. Then again, with the cessation of mental formations, consciousness ceases. With the cessation of consciousness, mentality or materiality ceases. And with the cessation of mentality and materiality, sixfold sense basis ceases. And again, with the cessation of sixfold sense base, contact ceases. With the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. With the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. With the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. With the cessation of clinging, becoming ceases. With the cessation of becoming, birth ceases. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. This is the cessation of whole mess of suffering. So now you can see that in the first part, origin, now you can go to the cessation. So this is the formula. This is the one kind of the discourse and formula the Buddha provided, what he understood from the doctrine of dependent origination. So now I am going to the brief discussion about each of the link, each of the constituent. Then we can, I hope that from this discussion that Linda also can find your answer as well. We are coming soon, this part. So now we understand the root problem. So what is the root for all the suffering? So Buddha mentioned, according to the Buddha, he states that ignorance is the root. So actually, conventionally, we can explain that what is ignorance? Like, ignorance is not knowing, as we know that But Buddhist term for ignorance is defines as the lack of knowing the Four Noble Truths. So, the Buddhist practice based on ultimate truth. As we know that something conventional truth and ultimate truth. In Pali we said, or Sanskrit, sambriti and sambriti and some conventional truth, one is ultimate truth. So from the ultimate aspect, not understanding or not knowing the Four Noble Truths, it is the ignorance. So as we discussed, the Four Noble Truths are suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the way to its cessation. Actually, this is not my own opinion. It's the opinion from the sutra, from the Nikaya text. So Nikaya text, it defines ignorance defines as the lacking of knowing the Four Noble Truths. And we also can explain ignorance as in this aspect, because it's all are talking about the ultimate truth. We can define also ignorance as a positive misconception and not the mere absence of knowledge. So by this way, since we can be clear about our ignorance, about the root ignorant part from our understanding, we can work out. So because of not knowing, it is the ignorance. We are going through a lot of problems. We create a lot of problems. So knowing ignorance as ignorance, that is the wise reflection. So in the Pali or Sanskrit discourse, maybe sometime you can see this term, wisely reflection. It says sometime in Pali, yoniso manasikara. So it meaning that knowing ignorance as ignorance, knowing the reality as it is. So it is the wisdom. This is the wise reflection. So now we understand in this formula of dependent origination, what is ignorance? So again, I recall it. Ignorance refers as the lack of knowing the Four Noble Truths from the ultimate standpoints in terms of early Buddhist scriptures. So then, as we we are coming to the next formula. So maybe you can remember that avijja paccaya sankara. With the origination of ignorance, mental formation arises. The mental formation, it says in Pali, sankara, or in Sanskrit they say sanskara. So sankara or mental formation defines essential conditions of mental coefficients, or we can translate as sankara is an expression of the habitual tendencies. whether positive or negative, that leads the mind to attachment. So I know, like, I give you the one example: ignorance, the part. So with the origin of ignorance, sankara, like for mental formation, arises. Sometimes maybe we are intentionally or unintentionally, we are, we are attached to our uh, smartphones. I just give you an example. So maybe we continue to the social media, like until we sleep. So we know that as the according to the one research, the recent research, it mentioned that people need to be before sleep, maybe 1 hour before the sleep, they need to be close their devices, whether computer, monitor, or smartphone too. But but we don't know this information, but we are still attached to. So it became our habit until we sleep, until we fall in sleep. We are habituated to this, to this, to using these devices. So the ignorance leads to habitual tendencies. So you can see that it is the mental efficiency or essential conditions or mental coefficients. So Buddhist scriptures, and actually the Buddha specified, there are 3 kinds of mental formations or volitional formations. So 3 types of volitional formations are, in generally, the bodily volitional formation, the verbal the verbal volitional formations, I'm mistake, and the number 3 is that the mental volitional formations. So there are 3 volitional formations or mental formations. So if we reflect a little bit more, like bodily, our physical actions, verbal, our oral, how do we talk, how do we behave, how do we think, and mental, how do we train our mind. So you can see that how ignorance lead our mind, lead our body, and lead our oral expressions into more, more attachment. So this is the brief of Sankara, mental formations. Now we're moving to the number 3, consciousness. So for all of your information, I'm trying to provide the brief notion of all the constituents or 12-fold formulas regarding to the early Buddhist scriptures. So in my research, I remain to only Nikaya and Agama text. So all the early Buddhist, all the references from early Buddhist scriptures. So anyway, so number 3, consciousness. So return to the formula. With the origin of mental formation, consciousness arises. You can see this term in many ways in the Buddhist scriptures. So consciousness denotes as mental quality. It operates a key role in how the mind operates into phenomenal and physical actions. I'm sorry. So So consciousness somehow is of course, is a mental quality. It offers the judgment. So now we are going to this. The Buddha said, I mean, in the early Buddhist scriptures, we came to know about the six-fold classifications of consciousness. I and seeing is create the I consciousness. So I can't, I mean, it means like consciousness is the key roles to notice what do you see. I just see, but I can't notice. It is still rupa. I still can't notice that what is it, what it is. But our inner wisdom, it can recognize that this is my pen. But I can see, I can't recognize it is the pen. But mental quality is a consciousness, is recognized. It is the pen. We know the pen as a pen. So I is still rupa, but I and I and seeing is create I consciousness. In the same way, we can see ear consciousness, hearing, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, body and sensation, and mind consciousness. So again, I switch to the early Buddhist script. It was mentioned by the Buddha himself. There are six-fold classifications of consciousness. Now, I repeat again the formula, the Buddha's formula, what he said. He said, with the origination of mentality and materiality, consciousness arises. It mentioned in terms of forwarding order of dependent origination. On the other hand, reversing order of dependent origination, it can mention that with the cessation of mentality and materiality, consciousness ceases. So how it is related to each of the link you can see. And the sixfold classification of consciousness, it is the brief explanation by the Buddha himself mentioned. It was recorded in Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha. So another thing that I mentioned, consciousness and wisdom are inseparable. As you mentioned that in the last slide, consciousness defines the mental quality. So Buddha strictly said, consciousness and wisdom are inseparable. Wisdom can't flourish alone without awareness of consciousness. It was the direct statement from the Buddha himself and recorded in Majjhima Nikaya from Mahabedala Sutra. So again, I repeat, wisdom can't flourish alone without awareness of consciousness. Consciousness appears as an enduring subject due to lack of attention when it is mindfully examined. The appearance of lastingness is dissolved by the perception of its impermanence. So anyway, again so far we have done just 3 links. You can see that how the ignorance creates, ignorance is the root to originate mentality and materiality. And from mentality and materiality, you can see how the consciousness arises. And now number 4. I'm sorry that I speak a bit wrong. How the ignorance, then mental formations, and consciousness. And now we are moving to mentality and materiality, nama and rupa. So it is number 4 right now. Now we are going to number 4 constituents. May I know that, do you have any questions at this point? Because it is still long topic.
Yes, Samjoy.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
I do have a question regarding why, I mean, in the order that you gave before, we started by ignorance, but now why didn't we follow the becoming, the clinging, the craving, the feeling, the contact, the 6-fold sense basis? Are we going backwards here?
Well, it's a good question, actually. I understand what you mean. It's a good question, actually. It could be. It is based on the individual experience. Again, I telling you, this formula, it was experienced by the Buddha himself. So regarding to his, from his understanding, he briefly, he gisted with the 12 links. I think it could be more, sometimes it could be less.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a, and you can, if you go to the Abhidharmika explanations, Abhidharmika literature evolved based on this, the early Buddhist teachings. So based on these 12 links, sometimes you can see the more explanation about the consciousness, about the mind, about the mental factors. So any other?
Well, no, well, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt again, because I am confused now, because consciousness, the 6-fold sense basis comes after consciousness that brings mentality and materiality. And now you're saying that, I was a little bit confused about the linking of the order of the different components of dependent origination.
Yeah, so
I know it's
that means that we are in the zone. Actually, we are trying to understand. So as the Buddha initially, he clarified that it is the very profound, subtle, and difficult to understand. So this is the one reason that after he was enlightenment, he refused to teach. So it mentioned in sutra very in wonderful way, that it mentioned that after 7 weeks of his reflection in Buddha Gaya, he decided that not to teach to the people, because in the 7 weeks he was experienced that forwarding order and reversing order of the dependent origination, and finding out the taproot and how to, eradication of this suffering. So this time, in this, actually we can find in this conversation between the Buddha and his one of the heavenly beings, that he refused to teach. He said that the teaching I realized is hard to explain, Duddhaso Duranubodho, difficult to understand. But anyway, we try to make it a more clear sense that each of the links. So according to his formula, he discovered, he came with the ignorance, start from ignorance, they move to mental formations. Then from mental formations, consciousness arises. So now we are going to the, yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, I had a question. You mentioned that the text, the Visuddhimagga, which was set forth by Buddhaghosa.
Yeah, in the 5th century.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the Buddha himself taught these teachings of dependent origination. I wasn't clear whether he taught both sort of abstract and then more specific or practical aspects of describing, but I had a question. As I understand it, some of these concepts such as karma, cause and effect, were sort of that kind of thinking was existed at the time of the Buddha, before the Buddha taught. And
yes.
I'm wondering whether these teachings of dependent origination were, to what extent are they, would you consider them specifically Buddhist ideas, or were these ideas also somewhat established at that time before the Buddha taught? And then were these teachings modified at the time that Buddhaghosa taught, during that time of the early Buddhist time?
I try to understand that your inquiry. You were right that the concept of karma was there. It was pre-Buddhist Indian time we categorized as Upanishad period. So pre-Buddhist time of India, we can see the term of karma. Even the Buddha's time, I mean, of course, the Buddha briefly, extensively discussed about the karma, the term, but the term of karma was there. And now there's some investigation from the practitioners that even the concept of karma was there, but what was their destinations? So it was everything almost same. Like if karma, the notion of karma, we mention as a action. So wholesome action and unwholesome actions. So then resultant, it says that if someone produces a good action, wholesome action returns to him. If someone, in the same way, if somebody do bad, unwholesome action return to him. But so people are producing the good things because they would like to go to the heaven and Brahma world. So that is a kind of the craving for becoming. As we discussed in our last lecture, there are the 3 types of craving we discussed. So craving for existence, craving for non-existence, and craving for sensual pleasure. We discussed this term in the last week. So what the difference between the Buddha and the pre-Buddhist Indian religious teacher? He was the Buddha, he said, well, we still have attachment. I produce something good, I would like to transcend into heaven. But well, after heaven, where should I go? And after heaven, there's another realm they found. It's a Brahma world. It's more beautiful spaces. And after Brahma world, where should I go? So still I'm becoming, we are still in this cycle. So he said that, well, we should cut off, he speaks the term, asrava, cut off the defilements, non-attachment. So we do good, we contribute some altruistic actions, we have a generous heart, we practice, but try to remain our mind and heart as detachment, no attachment, no clingings. So now he found the nirvana. It is beyond the projections or producing of karma. So nirvana is there is no origination, there is no extinctions. It is the beyond the cycle of samsara. So so the Buddha's the new concept he brought through his practice is the nirvana. But you were right, Alex, that the concept of karma was there during the time of the Buddha, and also that a pre-Buddhist Indian time, it was there. And Upanishad period, they have a lot of literatures based on this. But yeah, they also have a the concept of rebirth too. So life after life, rebirth. But Buddha, he uniquely mentioned that there is nor nihilism or nor eternalism. There's two other concepts. So nirvana, he introduced the path of middle way. So nirvana is neither nihilism nor eternalism. So nirvana is with the language of dependent origination, I can explain there is no originations. So in the same way, there is no cessation. So this is the unique teachings that the Buddha was introduced to his to his followers. So dependent origination or four noble truths, they show the roadmap and clear structure, how to find the root, and in the same way, how to eradicate the cause of suffering. Or you can say that as a psychological, it is one of the psychological aspects. How to, as all the terms we discuss about that mentality, materiality, consciousness, six sense doors, contact, these all are psychological perspective, how to dealing with the mind, how to find the origin of the the dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. As the Buddha clearly mentioned, my object, and throughout my teaching, I taught only two things. Of course, there are so many literatures, so many texts we can find from early Buddhist scriptures. But if you look at them carefully, you can see that the two things are the two objectives, the two output. One is to find out the root of suffering and its taproot, and the cessation and the path, how to eradicate the dukkha.
So you're saying basically the laws of cause and effect will teach one to some extent how to minimize the experiences of suffering, but the Buddha's insight was more subtle, and he taught kind of a way to transcend the experience of suffering more fully.
Yeah, I agree with that. Right. So shall I continue today that mentality? Okay, the number 4 part, I think. So far we discussed about that ignorance, mental formations, sankhara, and consciousness. So now number 4, we provide the what is nama rupa, or mentality and materiality. You can see this term a lot in the Buddhist scriptures and in the Abhidharmika text too. But I just provide you explanation regarding the early Buddhist script. So Buddha said, mentality as it correlates to feeling, perception, volition, contact, and attention, while form derives from four great elements. So it's very interesting. Like I see all this mentality and materiality, nama rupa always together. We never see nama is separated and or rupa is, so it's not isolated. Nama and rupa should be together. Like, so this means like in nama, we can see like as a mind or consciousness somehow, and rupa is a form. So the pen, I have a pen, one pen, it's a rupa, it is a materiality. So it doesn't have a heart, but we the beings, human beings and animal beings, we have a nama rupa, both. So that's why we have a life, we have a judgment, we have a mental quality, we have wisdom. So as in according to the scriptures, the early Buddhist literature, mentality as it correlates to feeling, perception, volition, chetana. I'm sorry, my typos, wrong spelling, and contact and attention. So, and form, the rupa, is arrives from four great elements. So in the Buddhist scripture, he said that our four great elements are obviously in general term too, like earth, fire, wind, and water. Sorry. So nama, rupa, mentality and materiality are connected to 5 aggregates. So, and this explanation I took from the path of purification, Venerable Visuddhimagga's, Venerable Buddha Ghosa's text, Visuddhimagga, from chapter 27. So in this part, he said that nama or mentality is correlated to aggregates of feelings, perception, and mental formation, whereas materiality is signified with the aggregates of mental forms. But I like to back to a little bit about our formula, the teaching of doctrine of dependent origination. It says, again, with the origination of consciousness, mentality and materiality arise. So in the reversing order, with the cessation of consciousness, mentality and materiality ceases. So it is, again, I'm just recalling that it is a brief, a bit brief notion as we can found from early Buddhist scriptures. Here, I'm not providing my opinion, it's opinion from the Nikaya text. Then the next part, the sixfold sense basis. So it explains about the straightforward way. So it's a bit understandable, it's not complicated. With the origin of mentality and materiality, 6 sense doors or 6 sense bases arise. So what are the 6 sense bases? So as you know that the 6 sense are eye base, ear, nose, tongue base, body base, and mind base. So all the 6 sense base are operated by the mind base. So mind is the key here. So we can find that more explanation about the sixfold sense basis in details if you go to the Abhidharmika literatures and commentary, the commentary of Mahanidana Sutra as well. But however, we just moving with the straightforward explanation from the early Buddhist text. So again, I recall, with the origin of mentality and materiality, six sense base arises. With the origination of six sense bases, contact arises. So now the contact is very interesting. The contact. So contact is the sorry. So contact is defines as fundamental fact in sense impression, and contact as originating in the contact of mentality and materiality. It is as we discussed before. And there are 6 classes of contact. It's the same, like a straightforward way, like eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and mind contact. So we can see that another clear explanation about contact is about, sometimes it's a complicated too. So how the contact arises. Contact, regarding to the Hannibal Sutra, the discourse of Hannibal from Majjhima Nikaya, Sutra number 18, it says, depending on the eye and forms, eye consciousness arises. The meeting of these 3 is contact. Actually, it was explained by Mahakassapa, a Buddha's disciple, but in the presence of the Buddha, actually. So that's why we say that early Buddhist scriptures, we can mention. So the contact arises through the 3 things together. It should become 3 things together. I, just as I, and forms, I consciousness. I, forms, and I consciousness. These 3 create contact. In the same way, ear, hearing, ear consciousness. These 3 things create contact, ear contact. So in the same way, we can see nose contact, body contact, tongue contact, and mind contact.
Sanjoy, yeah. May I a quick question about this? That implies that there is in this conception of everything, that implies that there is a world out there, or between contact, that means I, and forms, meaning it's a dualistic kind of a conception of the world. There is a world up there, materiality, and my sense-based I contact that form, and then my perception will tell me it's a tree or a glass or a person or a computer or something, or I'm confused about that.
Well, yeah, thanks for your question, actually, inquiry. It's about more psychological way. It is, what I understand, early Buddhist scriptures, I'm talking early Buddhist scriptures, it provides only just a brief explanation. What did you say that maybe Abhidharmic explanation, there's a little bit details about that, and how the I and forms, it has more there are manifestations. Well, that I just provide you this the brief explanation regarding this book, okay. what the Nikaya text and mention. I just stay with this with this formula. Anyway, so the definition of contact is I, form, and I consciousness. So So the three things create contact. This meeting of this tree is contact. In the same way, we can see that ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, tongue and tasting, and tongue contact. So these three, so in the mind and feeling, and mind contact too. So then from after the contact, number 7, from the origination of the feeling, origination of contact, feeling arises. So there are, in the same way, it is also a kind of straightforward too. So feeling is the condition of the rising of craving. And we also know that 6 kind of, based on the 6 contact, there are the 6 kind of feelings. And then from with the origination of, with the condition of the feeling, craving arises. This is a very big part. So now the coming to the sequence, how the craving start, the feeling. With the origination of feeling, craving arises according to the forwarding order of dependent origination. But in the according to the reversing order of dependent origination, with the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. So the 6 classes of craving are craving for forms, craving for sound, music, good voice, or something good, some good music too. Craving for smells, perfumes, or craving for taste, something good food. Craving for tactile objects, or bodily sensations, or sensual pleasure, you can say. And craving for mental phenomena. So this explanation, again I tell that this explanation mentioned in the brief idea mentioned in the early the connected discourses of the Buddha. So craving is a big part. Again, I recall that following with the origination of feeling, craving arises. With the origination of craving, clinging arises. So clinging is another, is a very important part. Is the clinging is attachment or grasping. So in the same way, Buddha provide that there are 4 kinds of clinging or attachment. These are clinging to sensual pleasure, is based on your contact, is based on the 6 sense doors. It's clinging to sensual pleasure, clinging to views, like somebody are very orthodox with his own concept. It's a my concept. So that is a view. So if someone a very strong attachment with his own viewpoint, it's very hard for him or her to see the things widely with open-hearted. So clinging to the views is a create for more suffering as well. And clinging to the rules and the vows, like ritual part, some ritualistic stuff, or some kind of the old fashions. I mean, some traditions too, So some traditional activities sometimes doesn't make sense, but some people are clinging with their rules and vows. So it's like without having wisdom, without using that, the mental eye-opening, like without offering the more wisdom, sometimes someone clinging to their rules and vows. And number 4, clinging to the doctrine of self, atta, like I. It's the self, this is mine, or this is mine. This is, this is belong to me. This is my concept. This is my view. So this is atta, the soul, self. So it's a grasping. is cause for most suffering. Sometimes you can say ego, mental ego, sometimes we have an agreement, we have a disagreement. So, when the ego is bigger, so, disagreement hurt us, cause for suffering. So again, I back to this Buddha's word, the formula. With the origination of craving, clinging arises. Then the next, with the origination of clinging, becoming arises. So becoming bhava in Pali or Sanskrit too, the same way it explained. Becoming refers to the sensual characteristics of body. There are threefold types of becoming or existence. So sense sphere becoming, form spheres becoming, and formless sphere becoming. So sense sphere, like a sensual way, like a sometime like we have a kama bhavo, like sensual pleasure. They want to becoming through the sensual activities. So as we can discuss in the earlier part, we can know the contact, we can see the feelings, we can see consciousness too. So all the things with the origination of this kind of these links, that contact, feeling, now mentality and materiality becoming arises. So sense sphere existence and form sphere existence, rupa bhavo and arupa bhavo, or formless sphere existence. So these three terms were specified by the Buddha himself from the early Buddhist scriptures. And again, coming to the formula, only two links are remaining right now. With the origination of the becoming, birth arises, and with the origination of birth, aging and death arises. So like a birth is the entire embryonic process, beginning with conception and ending with parturitions or young age. The Buddha said, the birth is the various beings into various orders of beings, their being or descent into mother's womb, production, the manifestations of the aggregates, the obtaining of sense bases. So this translation I directly took from the Nikaya text. And as we discussed, with the origination of becoming, birth, aging, and death, it's normal. After we're born, we are growing up. So being old age, brokenness, wrinkling, decline of vitality, degeneration of the faculties, and death. A being decreasing, passing away, breaking off, disappearance, mortality, death, completion of time, breaking off of all aggregates, and casting off the body. So these are the, these are the 12 links of 12 constituents of the dependent origination in the practical way. So as we discussed about that, I just going back to a little briefly, like abstract formula of dependent origination provides cause and effect, and practical formula of dependent origination provides details through 12-fold constituents within two sequences, forwarding and reversing. So forwarding order of dependent origination help us to understand the origin of suffering, and reversing order of dependent origination provides the how to break down or cut off the root problem, root causes, and to eradicate the suffering and find the path, a path of path to awakening. So, so I think I'm nearly end this class. So please feel free to ask any questions. So is there any insight or anything like discussion? Please feel free. Yeah.
Sanjay, could I ask you a question? So I haven't got my video today.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion of the 12 links and the Chitta Niyama, the flow of chittas in the Pali Abhidhamma? They seem very similar, and I just wondered if
there is some discussion about the Chitta Niyama, dependent origination in Pali Abhidharma. Try to think about there's about 24 pachaya actually, 24 conditions.
Right.
In Abhidharma literature, it's explained. So I found this 24 pachaya in if I believe that Patthana, the 7th text of Abhidharma. Number 7 text, Patthana. So in this text, it mentioned that 24 conditions, but they go to the Abhidharmic explanation is went to the details, but stay with the Chetasika, you know the term, that mental concomitants.
Mm-hmm.
So this term Chetasika, we don't find actually normally in the Nikaya scriptures. So whatever I discussed today, it's based on early Nikaya and Agama. It speak the same language, same word, based on their explanation from the scriptures, the early scriptures one. But Chitta Niyama, it explained is in that text, in only Patthana. Okay. And Abhidhamma Sangraha also explained a little bit about that in the I believe in 7th chapter of Abhidhamma Sangraha, the compendium of Abhidharma text.
Thank you. And the other question I have, it's slightly weird this, in the 12 links, consciousness precedes and is a dependent condition for the arising of the sense bases and therefore contact.
Yeah.
In the definition of contact, consciousness arises as a consequence of the meeting of organ and sense object.
Right.
It seems to be the reverse order.
It is, it is reverse order too. So
a bit weird. Maybe is that because sense consciousness, as compared to consciousness as a skandha, is possibly why maybe sense consciousness arises dependent on contact, but not consciousness as a skandha. Otherwise, it's going in the reverse order. Yeah.
That's why that I earlier I mentioned that. The formula here you say that abhijja pachaya sankhara, like with the origination of the ignorance, mental formation arises. But it also can be said that abhijja pachaya tanha, with the origination of ignorance, craving arises. So it is the Buddha's investigations about the two other things. But again, I clear a little bit. The definition of contact, as I said that is in Pali original word, it means from Madhu Pindika Sutra, the discourse of Hannibal Sutra, it says, Chakkuncha paticha rupecha chakku biyanam tinnam mystery tinnam samviti paso. So that means that depend on I and consciousness. Chakku as I and his form. Sorry, I and form, I consciousness, I form, and I consciousness. The three create the contact. So this definition was provided by Venerable Mahakachyayana in the vicinity of the Buddha. But Buddha did not say this definition, but since this discourses was went through in presence of the Buddha, so that's why we took it. Buddha agreed with these definitions.
So could it be that actually, because you said that consciousness arises, sense consciousness, this is, arises due to the meeting of the organ and the sense object. Could it be more that just the definition of contact is the meeting of organ, sense object, and consciousness?
It could be. It could be, but I stick in this class with the only the early Buddhist, as I mentioned, early Buddhist scriptures. But it could be, as you said, it could be. It's not impossible. It's just in general overview to go to the details, to help us to go details, and we can explore more. Maybe it could be the 100 constituents. We just know the 12 links, but it can be 100, it can be thousands too.
So the other question I have, and this is because of course, modern conception of causation tends to put it in time. So a cause is before its result. Is it proper to understand the 12 links as a sequence in time? Or are they sometimes parallel with one another? I mean, it's only a Western conception that has causes and effects linked in time.
Yeah, I'm very new about that that part. I guess it could be correlated with the times too, since it describes about the entire process. And of course, time. It also divided into 3 parts: past, present, and future. So the 12 links, as if you have a moment, actually, I am sorry that I took the today longer part. So I show the actually I did not go into this part because of the I took today very long. Anyway.
Well, perhaps, Sanjoy, you could do that in the next class, because this is such a big
topic.
Maybe it'd be good to do another class on it. But anyway.
Yes. So by the way, so before I finish that, I just say that it mentioned about the time, past, present, and future. So it categorized that first two, like ignorance and mental formation, as a past karma, past, and the present consciousness, the present life is that consciousness and mentality, materiality, 6 sense bases, contact, feeling, craving, clinging, and becoming. And future is birth, aging, and death. That's the mostly categorized by Venerable Buddhaghosa in the 5th century. And of course that Nagarjuna also, in his text Mula Madhyamaka Karika in the 2nd century too, he also agreed with this formula.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so one last question, so anybody can. Yeah, please, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it may be a little bit off the topic, but maybe a simple question for you. Yep. I wondered when you talked about the aspect of the dependent arising, and I'm just curious, would the understanding of that concept be different in the Mahayana teachings than the early Buddhist teachings, or is it?
Okay, in your question, they have some part like early Buddhist teaching it starts from the Buddha's time until the first Buddhist council, the past 100 years. So early Buddhist scriptures. The Mahayana terms, Mahayana came later on. Actually, the school. So they agree with this early teachings of dependent origination, because Mahayana Buddhism, it's also based on one of the school like Nagarjuna's Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka philosophy. So Nagarjuna Madhyamaka philosophy, Madhyamaka, based on the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, one of the text, middle way, and in this text they explain the dependent origination in the same way. And just one thing, like as we just mentioned a little bit before, like when Richard asked question, the past, present, future. he described. But they agree, whether Mahayana traditions, Theravada traditions, and Tibetan traditions too. So this is the basic, the primordial formula of dependent origination, the theory, they agree. But it was since it was presented by the Buddha himself.
So the basic concept is the same, but it may become
more
somewhat different philosophical
explanation, evolution too. Right.
May I have the permission to
please.
say on Richard and Carlos' comment, if you do so?
Okay, please.
Thank you so much. So they were talking about the sense bases. So for example, we took the eye consciousness. So when the eye sees a form, for example, a pen or a pencil, then the eye consciousness arises. And because of this, the perception arises. And that's how we come to know that this is a pencil or any form. The eye on itself is not intelligent to understand that this is a pencil or a pen, but the perceptions and the mental formations, they tell us that this is a particular object. And that object or any kind of form is very necessary to arise that consciousness. And that's why we say that I, there should be our object as well. And that's only the eye consciousness will arise.
Yeah, that is correct. So that's why we can see that Nama Rupa together.
That is right.
Nama, mentality and materiality. So Nama can't be alone without Rupa.
Yes, that is right.
That's yeah.
Well, what is strange here is that contact happens after Nama Rupa and after consciousness in the 12 links. So it's dependently arisen. And so really there is actually a reversal there in the order, because it goes dependent on consciousness, just to cut the links out, Nama Rupa arises, and dependent on Nama Rupa, contact arises. But then the normal explanation is it's dependent on contact, consciousness arises, but consciousness has already arisen.
Yes, I think these consciousness, they're talking specially about the sixfold consciousness, which is the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. But the consciousness they're talking about before the mentality and materiality, which is the mind and the body, that consciousness is the knowing of all these things, all the mental formations, all the mental processes as it should. So they are talking about that consciousness there.
Well, I think that's a possible explanation, although I've never seen that given, but that it is actually that, I mean, in which case there's a link missing really, because there should therefore be sense consciousness arises, and from sense consciousness feeling arises, etc. And so in a sense you're implying there's a link missing, if that's the correct explanation.
Yeah,
there should be 13 links.
Yeah, as I mentioned that we just know the 12 links, from the Buddha, but it can be 100, it can be thousands. We don't know. It's just in a brief understanding from regarding to the early Buddhist scriptures. I think thanks Archana and Richard as well.
That's very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate your kind comment. Thank you so much, Richard and Sanjoy.
No, it's very interesting.
And thank you for the informative class, and thanks to all the participants as well. That gives me inspiration to continue the class as well. So thanks to you, all of you.
We are so glad to hear about that. Yeah. So I'm sorry that my apology that I took a bit longer today. So thank you very much for all of your kind attention. We hope to see you next week. Yeah, we'll go to the more details. Thank you. Bye.